As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We have an important first-time guest tonight, Brad Harris, founder of Full Spectrum Survival, an active member in the preparedness community. He analyzes news from all over the world on a daily basis for crisis awareness and rebroadcasts it on his channel, Full Spectrum Survival. He gives all kinds of perspectives of different techniques, strategies, and networking between other people who are interested in preparedness, survival, self-sufficiency. He's here with us for the first time on Reluctant Preppers. Brad, thank you for joining us.
Well done again. Thanks for having me, and I want to thank everybody listening. So you touched on current events and news events that are happening around the world. Just to give you a little bit of background, I have a history and a background in programming. So I program a lot in Python. I do a little bit of C++. I utilize that to gather information around the world. What I've done is I'll share with you next time we come on so that your viewers can kind of see it live. I've written an algorithm that goes out and searches forums around the world in multiple languages, searches current, large mainstream media, news outlets. It really searches massive amounts, tens of thousands of websites, and looks for keywords that I've programmed into it. And using a dictionary system, it goes out and finds the things that the survival and preparedness community need to know about. Those are things like viruses, potential outbreaks for pandemics, earthquake events, research papers on seismic events and tectonic activity. We look for nuclear events, really everything out there. And then it centralizes all of that, brings it to me on a daily basis. And that's what I use to build the World News Update, which we broadcast daily on the YouTube channel, Full Spectrum Survival. And we kind of use that information to build this furthering continuity of awareness for the entire community so that everyone can get in there and really be abreast of what's going on in the world today.
And in that note, we were talking just before we started the broadcast, you're concerned about and keeping an eye on some civil unrest that's happening in Jammu and Kashmir. Can you bring us up to date on that and why you think that's significant for people to be aware of?
I'll tell you what, Jammu and Kashmir, they're in their 52nd or 53rd day of government-mandated curfew right now. It started with just social unrest on a small scale and quickly became inflamed to large-scale unrest and anti-government riots throughout the contested areas. And the government quickly cracked down, put a curfew on both sides of the territory zones. No one was allowed inside or out of their houses. No one was allowed to go to the grocery store, doctor's office, government offices, anything. They clamped it down. It was essentially martial law. They've had some ups and downs in the way that they've enforced it, which has allowed people in some respect to gain some normalcy, but you're talking half hour, hours out of the day to go out and get all the things that you need to get done. And if you're out at the time that the curfew starts, you're going to get the heavy hand of the local military order. That is extremely significant to us within the survival and preparedness community because it's not just happening in Jammu and Kashmir. We're seeing a heavy-handed response to all sorts of protests. We've got Zimbabwe that's protesting right now. Nigeria is in the middle of building protests due to their economic collapse. We've got it in Bolivia. It's just happening all over the world right now. And we in the community need to look at these events and see what we can learn from them. What I've seen in Jammu and Kashmir is the people that were most hurt by the situation were those that didn't prepare themselves beforehand. And now we're not talking American preparedness. We're not talking Western preparedness. These are people who live on their preparedness. So they've got rice in storage. They've got goats, they've got cows, they have access to everyday fresh greens, things like that. And so the people who were really hurt were those that are in need of weekly medication, those that didn't have any rice stored, those that were kind of living on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. Then they were all of a sudden stopped. They weren't allowed to go to the store, weren't allowed to communicate with friends and family. They shut down cellular networks, shut down the internet so that people couldn't organize protests and really clamp down on everything. And that's something that we each need to kind of look at and say, okay, well, what can I do to better my situation right now so that if martial law, if curfews happen in my local area, how can I be better prepared?
Yeah, and people have a tendency when they hear of these things happening in distant countries to think, well, that's a different side of the world. That's completely remote. It's out of touch. It's out of sight and out of mind. But as we've seen in Ferguson, Missouri, and other places in the last couple of years here, things can happen in a big hurry, and you don't always get warning. I mean, these kind of things can erupt overnight. You're not always going to get a week or a month's notice to say, like sometimes when some severe weather is coming, people have 1 or 2 or 3 days notice before a big blizzard hits, and they can go out and try to stock up on things. But some of these civil unrest things can flare up very quickly when there's instability present in the system. So if we could leverage from that reminder and think about where people spend most of their waking hours. Most people don't spend most of their waking hours at home with their preparedness stockpiles and things that they may have, no matter how well you've fortified, have armaments or weapons or, food and water and whatever you've got at home. Most people spend a lot of their waking hours away from home at the workplace. And so if we could talk about strategies for getting home safely, no matter where you find yourself, because if suddenly on short notice you found out that things had gone to an unstable, unsafe condition and you needed to get home to your family, what are some of the strategies that you've developed and talked with and the people you network with about how to handle that?
Well, that's a great question. And the first thing I kind of want to mention on that is that it's not just civil unrest. It's not just riot. It's not just these major events. We have earthquakes happening around the world. We have severe weather events that are happening within the U.S. The flooding in Louisiana caused looters to go to houses, wrecking houses. They'd look for abandoned places. They'd confront some of the people that were in there. We have wildfires that just a few weeks ago sent 82,000 people from their homes. These events are happening around the world, and they're something that we have to be aware of. And like you said, we might be caught in the community away from our home, away from our preparedness items. So
I just thought before I let you go on, you've got to let people know what's going on right now at your home. We didn't even know if we were going to get a chance to do this interview tonight because why?
Because we have a severe weather event happening right here in my local area. We have a tropical weather event that turned into a tropical storm. Now we have a hurricane watch just on the west side of Florida as a storm, just sits out there. And that brings up a great point, and that's that just in my normal day-to-day business going out, and I have our family preparations well under control, but going out and kind of having a chance to observe the storm and observe the chaos that's happening just in my hometown, you have lines at the gas station that are 20 cars deep. Water is sold out everywhere. Batteries are sold out everywhere. Canned food is becoming sold out. These are current things that the people who don't think about this, as soon as the news organization says it's time to prepare, it's too late, because now you're fighting a mass of people to get the things that you'll need in the event of emergency if the power goes out or if the water goes out. So think a little bit of thoughtfulness and thinking ahead and knowing exactly what to do and already having that plan is really a key aspect of surviving any crisis event.
Well, I'll let you return to your normally scheduled program here of telling us if you find yourself at work or dropping off the kids at an event, picking up things from the store. If you're not where your prepared supplies are, if you're not at home, what are some strategies about getting home safely?
Okay, so the first thing that everyone needs to do is they need to have a get-home bag. And this needs to be a wearable backpack, a wearable bag that they have in their trunk of their car at all times. No matter where we go, we're always going to be closer to the car than we are at home. Having a bag in the car will allow us to have the essential items for survival there with us that we can then use to get home or use to get to a location that we know is safe. One of the most important aspects of that we use in building a get-home bag or in helping others build their own bag is the rule of threes. The rule of threes is 3 seconds without a weapon when you're faced with superior arms or endangerment. You have 3 minutes to survive without oxygen, 3 hours when exposed to severe weather, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. So adhering to the rule of threes, you can build your entire get-home bag, your entire preparedness method around the essential tiered plan of those items. Oxygen is kind of a given, of course. A weapon, those of your listeners who are in the United States have access to firearms. And those are very important because you are more likely than not going to be faced with a firearm. So being able to exceed the level of violence that you are given in the event of a violent disaster will allow you to overcome that crisis. 3 hours in severe weather, they need to focus on shelter. The first line of defense, the first line of shelter is, of course, your clothing and the things that you can wear. So rather than exposing a person to hypothermia or them and their family, having a poncho on them that can act as personal shelter, or a poncho that has grommets on it that can then be turned into a tarp shelter, these types of things can really be multi-purposed and won't take up much weight in a bag, and will allow people to, if they're stuck outside, survive the elements. Water is very important. Of course, it's important for our daily life, but it's also one of the heaviest things that you're going to carry in a bug out bag or in a bug out box. So having enough water on hand to get you to your location, or at least to get you started on the travel to your location, is important. But then understanding what to do after that point and having some sort of filtration unit, or at least knowing that you have to boil your water for 3 minutes at a minimum to kill the various levels of proteins, viruses, bacteria, and things that you'll be exposed to, during a disaster.
And in various situations, what are some strategies depending on the situation that you find yourself in? You've talked on your podcast about situational awareness, and you've talked about pre-planning routes through your town or your city. Can you address those for us?
Absolutely. The first thing that I would say is you need to gather your information from multiple sources rather than just relying on a single source of information. Look to news organizations that are outside of the United States with the full understanding that they also, just like mainstream media inside the United States, organizations outside will also have their own agenda. So don't let that agenda affect your awareness, but look to them for the information that's not getting reported within your local area. Look to internet organizations, people on the ground, police scanners, shortwave radio, and as last resort, ham radio in the event of the failure of other communication. So gathering your information from multiple sources is definitely a key part and one of the first steps of situational awareness. And then when you're in an event, when you're on the ground, knowing your environment, being able to take a picture in your mind right away and look for an escape route, knowing which way you should go, not being caught behind the curve of a disaster will help you survive it and get to that next point.
I recall something very startling that one of the instructors said in the concealed carry class that my wife and I attended a little while back. He said, and I don't take it literally, but it is a thought-provoking. It's a provocative statement. He says, always have a plan to kill each person that you're meeting. And I think what he meant, and he went on to explain it because that was really an attention-grabbing statement, but what he meant was, you never know whether it's a gas station or at a store or in a sporting event or as you're walking down the street at night or whatever, that individual that you're seeing, you don't know really all their intentions and everything. We assume the best, but it keeps you on your game. It keeps your mind thinking about your situation, your surroundings, the options that you have, the resources that you have available, the paths or the whatever, just to try to understand, are there people around who could help you if they needed to? Is there a way of communicating, signaling, that kind of thing? So it was a provocative statement, but it's a way of reminding yourself to keep yourself on your toes.
I like to remind everyone that I'm talking to that bad people and bad things are everywhere, but not everyone is a bad person. So it follows that exact process of thought in that no matter where you're at, a bad event could happen, something that puts you into an immediate crisis scenario that you have to think your way out of, or that you have to rely on training that you've had to get yourself out of. And one of those things, like you were saying, if you're walking through a store, if you're in the mall, being cognitive of the things that are around you. Are there like-minded people around you that probably are not there to do you harm or your family harm? Where are the exits at in a mall? Where are the areas that would provide you with best shelter in the event of a natural disaster? Understanding these things and really being aware of your scenario and aware of your environment will help you survive any sort of event that comes at you.
Can you talk to us a little about planned routes in your hometown?
Absolutely. So the first thing I want to talk about is communication with family and friends or with other group members. If you're in a survival retreat or if you have like-minded friends in the preparedness community, communicate with them what your routes of travel will be and what your evacuation routes will be, and also the triggers that will drive you to those evacuations. Knowing the back roads, knowing the places that you'll go to, knowing the routes that you'll take will not only help you, but if other people are supposed to meet you and they get to an area that is compromised for one reason or another, it just doesn't look safe or there's fighting or something going on there, knowing the second area to go to or another route to take will just be absolutely key. And one of those things that you can do is we, in today's information age, have access to great maps. We have access to software that lets us route our travel. We can take a walk through using Google Maps. We can actually see the area. Granted, it's dated a little bit, but we can see the areas that we can go through, and we can really map those areas out and create other plans and create other events that take place, in the event of violence or anything like that.
You made me think back to a article that our concealed carry class instructor recommended and actually handed out to us. It's called On Sheep, Wolves, and Sheepdogs by Dave Grossman. If anyone hasn't looked that up, go ahead and Google it. It's called On Sheep, Wolves, and Sheepdogs. And it was talking about an old timer, a Vietnam veteran, an old retired colonel, who said that most people in this society are sheep. They're kind, gentle, productive creatures that can only hurt one another by accident. And he said, then there are the wolves. The wolves feed on the sheep without mercy. And then there are the sheepdogs. He said, I'm a sheepdog. I live to protect the flock and confront the wolf. And in that article, he talks about how most people are really kind, decent people. But if you go out without being prepared and without that mindset of being a protector, then you're just one of the sheep. And recently, my wife and I had that conversation around that topic. And by shifting my mindset to that of being a bodyguard, it really just changes the way that you look at the situations you encounter. So if you could talk to us a little bit about some of the methods that people that you've networked with have recommended for if you do find yourself in a situation and now you need to get home yourself, what about gathering your family as well?
Okay, so you're asking kind of evacuation planning or group meeting planning, right?
Either if you're evacuating, that would be a secondary decision, but you had talked about a sort of setting up decision points. And one of the first things I think one of the goals was to get people home, get everybody home, unless that's not, somehow where people are going to be sure that that's not the place to go. So how do you make that call, that decision, especially if it's not just a one-person decision, but it's your family involved?
Okay, great. Well, what we've done with ourselves, with our own group, and with those that we've worked with is created a trigger system. And this is going to be individually tailored to each and every person out there. But what they're going to do is sit down and meet with their family or their group or their friends and set up triggers, realistic, real-life triggers that will drive them to action. So sort of a flow chart of events. And just to give you an everyday example, one of the triggers is flash flooding in your area. What will that drive you to do? What will your children do during a flash flood? What will your wife do? Does everyone know where to meet? An earthquake happens. Does everyone know that triggers everyone in the house to get out of the house right away so that your children aren't coming looking for mom and dad? Aren't walking through the house wondering where mom and dad know. They know that as soon as the house starts shaking, they get out of the house. But then where do they meet outside? It comes back to this tiered event communication that everyone and children understand. If you talk to them about an earthquake and if they feel the house shaking, to go meet by the mailbox, they know what to do, and then the responsibility becomes greater for the head of household or the head of group, but everyone else's responsibility goes inward a little bit and they can take care of themselves, get out, and it allows the person that's in charge of everything to just look at the environment, look at the event, and then make decisions on how to keep everyone safe. Like you said, the bodyguard aspect, the sheepdog aspect there, to keep everyone safe, in the event of a disaster. But creating a trigger system from what to do in the event of an earthquake, a house fire, a wildfire, flooding, civil unrest, political protests, 911 emergency services are down. These everyday events that can happen, knowing what to do after that point will be the most important thing that saves your life or the life of someone that you love if that sort of disaster comes your way. One of those things, and just bringing up the 911 services down, we just had the 911 emergency services down in Washington, D.C. for 12 hours. They've attributed a number of deaths to this. They're still unsure. An investigation is still ongoing as to the cause of it. There's some reporting on some level of suspected tampering, but it may have just been something as simple as communication wires getting cut. But what do? Do you know to provide the ABCs of life-saving treatment, airway, breathing? Do you know to provide the ABCs? Do you know how to stop a wound from bleeding out? Do you know exactly what to do? And does somebody else know what to do if that event happens to you?
You just, as you were speaking, it made me think about the closest things that I can recall from my childhood about this was when my sister was involved in the school safety guard and that sort of thing. And she came home and it was about fire safety, and we built rope ladder to get out the second floor window. We had a designated meeting place. We all knew what our jobs were, how to stop, drop, and roll, or crawl and touch the doorknob to see if it was all those things that you do but it was all around that one theme. And there were very few other times, either on being on vacation where we entered Disneyland when I was 6 years old. We said, okay, now if anybody gets lost any time during the day, we're going to meet at this landmark, that kind of thing. Coaching and practicing. Now, remember, ahead of going into this crowded situation at a fair or whatever, if you get lost, you can go up to these kind of adults that are wearing these uniforms and ask for help, and we'll meet here, that kind of thing. So it was very specific and the exception rather than the rule. But what you're talking about is more of a general life approach or life attitude where you talk about a wide variety of things, and that becomes an activity, a family activity, and something that isn't just a sort of like a painful, awkward, difficult conversation you have one time, but it's something you routinely talk about as a family. So how do you overcome sort of the stigma or the uncomfortableness and make it fun, make it interesting, so everybody wants to participate?
I think one of the first things that everyone should do is approach the subject from a factual standpoint. And of course, you don't want to scare younger children, but if you have children of age, to understand that the world is a difficult place to live in and that bad things can happen, approach everyone with the facts. Maybe a news article, rather than graphic video, maybe a news article talking about a couple of different events like wildfires, earthquakes, civil unrest. Let them know that these things exist and it's okay to talk about, because in Western society, you're right, we have this kind of foolishness over discussing these kind of topics. And what this does is it creates a perpetual hole of unpreparedness. But being able to break through that and actually just communicate with your family or with your group members or with friends at the office and start with the facts. Go with things that are happening right now around this world and just ask them, what do you think about that? And let them say what they think about that. Very often, they'll bring up their own insecurities about those events, whether it's scary to them or whether they think that an authority should have ruled a certain way, whether they say we should have, those people should have stayed at home rather than evacuating. Let them talk out those things and then go for a combined effort toward the things that you see providing the best chance of life and survival during those events, and really just hear it out. Earthquakes. Sure, I live in Florida, and we don't experience very many earthquakes here.
No.
But,
and if you did, there's no mountains to fall on you, so there you go.
That's right. But earthquake, Florida was once covered in water, and there's a chance that it might be covered in water once again sometime in the distant future. So just talking about it, and even though it's an unlikely event, having a reaction to it. And you'll find that your reaction to one unlikely event is going to be a similar reaction to another unlikely event. So they kind of get combined into this key and value set of preparedness, where one key will have multiple values. And just as another example, a house fire, someone knocking at the door, which turns into jiggling the door handle. Just talk these things out and what people should do, and really write them down. And then at the end, give everyone a copy of that. And then bring it up every once in a while with factual events, because people are used to seeing facts on the news. They're used to looking at mainstream media. So if you bring this up around current events that are happening around the world with reputable, commonly westernized, reputable organizations, it's a very easy lead-in to widespread communication over the issue.
Another thing you just made me think about is with families with children, or even just between husband and wife, that kind of thing. People sometimes avoid talking about scenario planning of what could go wrong because it's uncomfortable or it's unpleasant. You're talking about things that sound unpleasant, and it makes some people will scoff or make fun or say, oh, you're just being unrealistic, or you're being a chicken little, the sky is falling. But it's actually, as you point out, it's an opportunity. If you plan it ahead and you get your feet on the ground, it's an opportunity for you to be reassuring to your children, be reassuring to your spouse that no matter what happens, I will do what I need to do to take care of you, and I want to make sure that you are prepared to help take care of yourself. So it can be a source of reassurance and an expression of love and caring and commitment to each other in a family.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it is approached awkwardly in Western society, but then you go into other societies and it's a very open subject. It's something that everyone talks about because these are events that are happening annually, often a lot more frequent than annually. So they're kind of on the top of everyone's mind in other nations, in Russia, in Africa. All these places experience really disastrous events more often than we do here in North America. But that doesn't make it less possible. And just going back recently, we've got flooding across Louisiana. We've got wildfires on, because of a severe drought that isn't going to get any better. They project that wildfires are going to continue to race their way across the western side of North America, all the way into the breadbasket and even a little bit further as severe weather events continue to worsen across the world. So these are things that slowly but yet abruptly the people in America and North America are becoming more accustomed to hearing about. And you're right, it is a little bit shocking to some people. It is disastrous because they've had their head in the ground for a long time. But if you approach it from a common ground, bring it up and let them talk to you about it just by saying, what do you think about that? Or, honey, what would you do if that happened? Often without interjecting your own authority over the position, let them get their fears and concerns out, and then you'll have the right answer for them.
Yeah, you might find out with young children that they're really worried about, as my niece said, worried about quicksand and lava.
Oh, yeah, right.
She said, as kids, we have very distorted ideas of what the real hazards are. And
But that's okay. Let them talk it out.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, anything that gets their mind, planning, that motivates them to planning is a good thing.
Now, in that light, ironically, over the last century, there's been this huge migration in the United States, at least, of people from pretty much self-sufficient farms into very dependent urban living, a very high concentrated. We've talked with other guests here about the hazards that can offer in the case of any kind of upset. When you have that many people that close together and suddenly the supply chains get interrupted, it can become very volatile quickly. So could you talk to us about another topic that comes up on your channel, which is about practical urban exit strategies? I even saw a very engaging video that you produced about life under a bridge and actually doing it out, going with your feet and actually walking the walk and taking people through the steps that they might encounter if they needed to navigate through to get out of their city. So can you talk to us a little bit, what considerations should people be thinking towards about urban exit strategies?
Absolutely. And first, let me say that I use that programming algorithm that I told you about a little bit for my own means, and I used it to gather my own information that never gets broadcast on the World News Update. And so when I saw this tropical depression forming in the Gulf, I turned it on my local area and started searching through Twitter feeds and Instagram feeds and local comments on local news organizations, websites, things like that. And I was looking to see what the average person was talking about and looking for keywords that mattered to me. And the urban environment really does bring a boiling point to what could happen during a disaster. And let me give you an example of what I saw there. I saw Twitter feeds of people saying they were already going to loot. They said, I don't need to prepare, things not quoted, of course, but that they don't need to go out and they don't care if there's no water because they're just going to go get some water. There was some guys with pictures, with their guns saying, loot and ready, outlandish. And yes, that may have been just for flash and may have been just for show. But on the spectrum of people that aren't there to just be a sheep or sheepdog, they were looking at this potential hiccup in normal life as a way for them to get ahead. And that's what you're going to see no matter when a disaster happens. There's always going to be someone that's going to grab onto that to go loot or go harm someone or take advantage of that situation to better their own means that aren't for the good of everyone.
So it's real and it's important, and it really can turn bad. So what are some strategies that people can plan ahead with their family to have an exit plan?
The first thing that I can say is get out there and do it. One of the most important things that I tell everyone when they're saying, I need to start preparing, I need to do this, how do I prepare for a week without electricity? How do I prepare for all these different events? My first suggestion through communication with them is to go camping. And really go camping. Don't go RV camping. Don't go just to a campsite where you've got electrical outlets. Go out there to a state or local park and actually camp with your family. And what you're going to start to do after doing this a couple of times is you're going to build a routine of self-sufficiency when out there. And you're going to know how much water you need for a couple of days. You're going to know how much food everyone eats for a couple of days. You're going to start to acclimate yourself to the sounds of the environment. From living out in the woods for quite a couple of years, me and my wife lived on a large piece of property out in the middle of the state. In the middle of the night, when it's pitch black and there's things moving around your current area, even if you're just sitting there at a campsite, something as small as an armadillo can twist your mind into sounding like someone approaching.
Sure.
So become acclimated to these different sounds so that you're not lights on, gun out at every little thing that happens out there. But the second thing is, like you said, get out there and start doing it. And what we do and what we help people train to do is to move from their location to a retreat location or from somewhere in the city back to their home. And in order to start doing that, you're going to need to become aware of your environment and your local environment to your home or to your retreat location. Do you have somewhere to get water? Can you map the different areas to gather water from and to treat it, of course, before drinking it? Are there more populated areas that you want to avoid? Do you know the back routes? Have you ever slept in that area? And one of the things that I'm doing with this urban bushcraft series is one, taking away the always tactical aspect of preparedness. We really do live in a great time right now, and it is great to get out there and just sit down and look at the stars. So in the Urban Bushcraft series, I'm using this as an opportunity to both get out there and enjoy camping in the city, not out in the woods, but deep in the city, and also map my environment and map different areas and know where to go and know where to go for water, know where to, to go for wild edibles is another great point. And just get out there and start doing it. And once you start doing it, a disaster will just become another routine camping event.
Well, Brad, we're out of time for this episode, and we'd love to have you back. There's such a breadth and wealth of information that you have shared for years on your channel. If people want to find out more right now, what's the best way that they can find you?
Just go to YouTube and type in Full Spectrum Survival. You'll see our page where you can catch our world news update every day, where we update current events that are happening around the world and that mean something to the survival and preparedness community.
Brad Harris, founder of Full Spectrum Survival, thank you so much for joining us this first time here on Reluctant Preppers. We'll have you back again soon. Thank you, Don. Again, it was great, and I hope everyone got something from the listen. And I just urge everyone listening to research Jammu and Kashmir and the strife and difficulties that the unprepared have had there for the last 2 months under government curfew. Research some recent increases in tectonic activity and the studies that are being performed on volcanic eruptions around the world. Look for flooding and severe weather events, and above all,
start being more prepared today than you were yesterday.